They made machine tools for the manufacture of worm and helical gears. Joseph Whitworth, is a name I'm sure some of you know, had developed the first precision measuring machines and pioneered the standardization of engineering measurement. His nephew was a director of John Holroyd Company, and then Holroyd later moved to Milnrow near Rochdale, which is where I worked. In the 1950s, Holroyd's technical director went to Sweden to play golf with the director of SRM, whose name I've forgotten, but I can find it if anybody wants it. That was the company that invented the screw compressor. But they still had no adequate way of manufacturing the rotors. And the Holroyd man was persuaded to develop the first rotor manufacturing machine. His milling machines used rotating formed disc cutters, which in turn required a special machine tool to grind the precision profile on the cutter blades. It was able to grind the blade profile, measure the profile shape using a precision probe, and then apply feedback to the shape based on measured deviations. Howden in Glasgow then used these machines to make the first screw compressor rotors with a competitive price, if I'm explaining that properly. And this was much to SRM's delight, because many companies then around the world paid for a license to use their designs and incidentally to buy our machines to make them. So it worked out well. Okay, and where did I come into it? Right, as for me, I'd been teaching in independent progressive schools, which I'd enjoyed enormously. I was taken ill, and whilst recuperating at home, I reflected on my future and applied for a PhD research position at Huddersfield University. Much to my surprise, I was accepted, and I started in 1986. The supervisor was Professor Bob Munro, who was also a consultant for Holroyd. And Holroyd's MD was a Mr. Ronnie Kershaw. They were keen to find a better method of measuring rotors, so this was the research aim of my project. I'd never heard of Holroyd or screw compressors, so they arranged for me to spend 3 months on Holroyd's shop floor learning how rotors were made and measured. The current inspection method used feeler gauges to measure the clearance gap between pairs. You know, a man with the little, poke them in and draw them out and aim them and judge the tension and all that. It was a skilled job, but the method could not measure with the accuracy and repeatability that was needed. So my research resulted in a novel optical system using light intensity rather than imaging. So key events for me in 1989 to 90 were, page 2, number one, meeting a Serbian researcher, not Nikola, Violeta Stankovic at the university, and I married her. Holroyd employed me as their first research and development engineer, allowing me 6 months to write my thesis. My son Michael was born, I received my PhD, my invention was patented by Holroyd. I then started to work closely with Holroyd's designers. We produced the first optical rotor measuring machine. Besides measuring a pair of rotors' clearances, it could measure the rotor being measured. It could pair the rotor being measured with a master rotor, and so it could measure individual rotors. It could also measure transmission error, which is a source of compressor noise, and I've given a paper about that. Okay, but CS coordinate measuring machines were just reaching the market, but their measuring time was much longer than our machine took, so it wasn't suitable for fast production. And they couldn't measure transmission error. At the same time as the machine was being developed, I was sent to do presentations at compressor conferences around the world. The papers were initially about rotor measurement, but then widened to other developments in precision rotor manufacture. The locations were widespread, including Purdue, Dortmund, Kazan, and SRM Sweden, and others. I think SRM was in 1992 at that. But I started to wonder why no such events took place in this country. It's a long way to go to Purdue. Okay. Now, Holroyd and City. It was either 1991 or 92 that we at Holroyd had become aware of the compressor expertise at City. And it's even possible that Ian and I met at some of the events just mentioned. I'm not sure about that. Memories fade, don't they, Ian? We know that. Ronnie Kershaw, our MD, besides being my boss, was a strategist who I admired greatly. He believed in making friends before making business, and he said that often. Ian was invited to Holroyd for a meeting. I think I collected him from the train station in Manchester, and we soon shared our opinions on the inconvenience of travelling to such far-flung conferences to discuss screw compressors when the UK had been the home of their production. And one of us said, wouldn't it be good to have one in London? And the other one agreed. Is that right, Ian? Well, it was either me or you that said it, but we can't remember. We've had this discussion a couple of days ago. Okay, but I think that's where the idea came from. Okay, the relationship then developed in a way which had a significant effect on your department's future. Ian told us he had persuaded Nicola Stosic to work at City after he and his family had left the fracturing Yugoslavia for Germany in 1992. He was appointed visiting fellow February 93. Ian then discovered the Royal Academy of Engineering's offer of professorships requiring 50% funding from industry. So he contacted our Ronnie Kershaw about this, and Ronnie invited Nicola to visit Holroyd. Ronnie asked me to spend half a day with Nicola and to report back to him afterwards. After showing Nicola around our rotor production area, which we called the rotor shop, and explaining what each of the machine tools did, we had a long and interesting talk. And then I drove him back to the station and went to give my opinion to Ronnie. I said he was intelligent, quick to understand our processes, and enthusiastic. Does that sum him up, would you say? Yeah. Ronnie nodded, but said little, and I left his office wondering what the decision would be. The following day, he told me he had decided to give the full industrial contribution and would let Ian know. Okay. Right, back to Holroyd again. So City continued to develop gas and fluid models that we in Holroyd could never understand. We didn't need to. And instead, Holroyd's Alan Stephen developed software for profile modifications, which customers often asked us to make, to ensure that the rotors maintained rolling contact at the pitch line. If contact strayed elsewhere, frictional overheating could destroy the compressor in a few minutes. Then, under Alan Stevens' direction, we developed a addressable grinding process, which, with the benefit of error correction feedback software, achieved statistical profile control accuracies of plus or minus 12.5 microns, including variations throughout the batch. Then CBN grinding was offered, and for those customers who valued production speed over high statistical part accuracy, if I dare say that, that was also successful. I also developed a transmission error modelling process which allowed us to calculate and apply optimum profile end relief to compensate for the noise effects of rotor misalignment. Okay, results for all of us. Nicola was appointed Royal Academy Chair in February 1995. Ahmed was brought in as visiting fellow 1996. The Compressor Conference was started in 1999. I was later invited to give talks to City's MSc students about manufacturing methods, which I thoroughly enjoyed, and I only hope they did too. Lessons. I hope Ian and Nicola agree that one of the best things about retirement is being able to take the time to look back and see the fruits of what we did. I think the main lesson for us all is that collaboration and the trusting relationships it produces leads to benefits all round, not just for the partners concerned, but hopefully for the world as a whole. My final conference contribution was a joint video talk in 2021 with Jack Sauls, formerly of Train, which reports on the benefits of different institutions building trust and working together. We don't know whether there are unexpected events that happen, personal and departmental and societal and all that, but as far as I know, Holroyd is continuing to support the conference, and I hope that continues. None of us have control over life events. We should forgive and move on. None of us knows the future. We must value each moment and be grateful. Thank you.